As Temujin's power continued to grow, so too did the animosity towards him. The white-boned lineages of the steppe weren't happy with the changes he was making, and the power that he was gaining to support those changes. Over time, jamuka became the rallying point for anyone who opposed Temujin's power. Jamuka summoned a Kurultai to appoint himself Genghis Khan, the ancient title which meant Khan of all Khans. The last person to hold such a title happened to be Onkong's uncle, who was the previous Khan of the Kariid. Therefore, by proclaiming himself Genghis Khan, he was not only challenging Temujin, but Onkong as well. In response to jamuka, Onkong decided to personally lead a coalition of his and Temujin's followers. The two sides met each other on the steppe. Each side attempted to inflict negative morale through a series of fear tactics. Shamans from each side would beat the drums of war and predict their side as the victor by reading cracks and bones. They were thought to be capable of changing the weather, and when the army of Temujin and Onkong's shamans accurately predicted a coming storm, Jamuka's forces fled in fear of the shamans and the power of the men who controlled them. Onkong and Temujin split up to chase down the fleeing force. When Temujin's force finally caught up to the Taichid, the same clan that had enslaved him as a child, Temujin's army came upon the enemy with the force of a lightning storm. After defeating them, he found the family who had helped him escape and freed them from slavery. It had been 30 years ago when Temujin was nothing but a slave to a clan in the distant reaches of modern-day Mongolia, and now he had conquered them. And as he looked into the past, he began to look into the future and think of what it might hold in store for him. Meanwhile, Jamuka had escaped Onkong and his army, and this would not be the last of Jamuka. He still had allies, and Temujin had not won yet. Now that Temujin had gained enough power, Onkong believed him capable of going on another raid against the Tartars. He subdued the Tartars, and rather than loot the city immediately after defeating the enemy, as would have been normal practice in previous raids by the Mongols, Temujin decided that he would obtain complete victory by waiting to loot the city until the fleeing enemy had been captured. He ordered that all the goods be looted and be brought to him to be handed out as he saw fit. He redistributed the loot to each soldier that fought in the conquest, but he also awarded an equal share to every orphan child created during the fight. In another revolutionary practice, he decided that unlike previous Mongolian raids, the captured soldiers and civilians were not to be either killed or left in their city, but were now a part of his territory and were to be treated as kinsmen. This initial conquest brought so many Tartar citizens into Mongolian society that over time, their name is what came to be known most throughout the world to represent the Mongolian people. Temujin's profound new laws sent shockwaves throughout Mongolia. He became known as the hero of the people, and as he added more and more revolutionary laws, more and more followers began to flock to his tribe. With a growing population of his camp, he decided to create a system to organize his army and entire society. He created squads, which were broken apart into groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and all the way up to 10,000. In this new system, everyone within his dominion were of the same bone and were expected to act like it. Onkong had noticed Temujin's growing power and started to become fearful of it. Temujin had sensed that trouble might arise out of his new strength and proposed a marriage between the families of the two Khans, proposing his first son Jochi to marry Onkong's daughter. Onkong accepted the proposal and invited Temujin to the wedding that would take place for the new couple. With false trust for the Khan, Temujin set out with a small group of men and his family. One day, before they reached the location for the wedding, Temujin learned that the invitation was a trap and fled, dispersing with a small contingent of warriors that he brought with him into all directions as he attempted to escape Onkong's large army. After chasing off the small force of Temujin, Onkong celebrated, thinking that Temujin had been dealt with and that he was no longer of any trouble. But Temujin had not been dealt with. After regrouping with his men, he sent word to his followers of what Onkong had done, and within days, his army had assembled itself around him. Overconfident, Onkong celebrated as Temujin's army raced towards his camp. As the army rode towards Onkong, Temujin had already stationed reserve stations, with reserves of fresh food and horses. Without any pause, Temujin could blink into the camp of the Kariid. Onkong's family was forced to flee in every direction, each meeting their end in various ways. Jamuka yet again fled from beneath Temujin's foot to the Naiman in the west. Onkong reportedly arrived at the border of the Naiman territory alone and in ragged condition. The guard refused to believe that this man was the great warrior ruler Onkong and killed him on the spot. The Naiman were now the last of the great clans that Temujin had yet to conquer, and they made their position with the Mongols clear by capturing a Mongol horseman, whose horse was rumored to be so tiny and skinny that the Mongols could not possibly be capable of contending with the great Naiman. The Mongols were outnumbered, and Temujin knew that, so he ordered each of his men to light 5 campfires, to give the impression to the Naiman that the Mongols were a vast army, far larger than they had originally believed them to be. Knowing his army was nonetheless outnumbered, Temujin used his squadrons of 10 to swarm the Naiman from all directions, sometimes laying low while another group attacked the Naiman from another side and then popping out of hiding and surprising the Naiman from nowhere. He used several other formations to attack the Naiman that left their numbers useless to them. One was a formation in which squadrons would advance in the shape of an arrow and volley arrows at the enemy, then immediately flee to the rear as new squadrons came to replace them. The tactics that Temujin used against the Naiman allowed his smaller army to easily crush the Naiman. The Naiman Khan was executed, while several of his family members died in their attempts to flee. Jamuka managed to escape from Temujin's foot once again, but no longer had any white-boned family to run to, and was forced to live as an outcast. With a small band of followers by his side, Jamuka was forced to hunt wild animals and live the same life that Temujin once had. The last symbol of Mongolian white-boned ancestry was condemned to the lifestyle of a forest hunter who lived on scraps at the outer edges of Temujin's territory. A year later, Jamuka's small group of followers captured him and turned him into Temujin, hoping that they would receive some reward. Temujin rewarded their betrayal by executing them in front of Jamuka. He then turned to Jamuka, looking back on their days as brothers, and offered him a chance to amend the past that had seen them brought apart, to unify as brothers, and to rule together. Jamuka responded like this: "Now, when the world is ready for you, what use is there in my becoming a companion to you? On the contrary, sworn brother, in the black night, I would haunt your dreams. In the bright day, I would trouble your heart. I would be the flea in your collar. I would become the splinter in your door. Kill me, and lay down my dead bones in the high ground. Then eternally and forever, I will protect the seed of your seed, and become a blessing for them." Temujin granted his brother's wish, and buried him with the same belt that he had given him when they swore each other blood brothers. Stick around next episode for the conquest of northern China. Support the channel on Patreon, and subscribe for weekly animated history videos.